Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. So got a video for you guys today, and it's going to be about deciding whether you want to go with an S550 Mustang or an S650. So I guess to start off, I've had both. I had my 2018 S550 for about 3 years until I sold it, and then I went with this S650 Mustang. The reason I wanted to get out of my S550 and S650 wasn't any super particular logical reason. Really, I just kind of wanted something new. I saw these new S650s out and I was very intrigued by them. I saw everybody was doing the Whipples with them, and I kind of want to hop on that bandwagon, really, so to speak. Now, I know you can do the Whipples of the S550s, but when these S650s hit the ground, that was really the go-to modification because you couldn't tune these cars right away. And the only access to the ECU was Whipple in partnership with Ford Racing. So they were really the only ones that you could really get a good power boost or a good power bump on these cars. So I I had my 2018. I loved that car, but I really just kind of wanted something new. I didn't really want to throw a bunch of supercharger money at my S550. Um, Not really that it was like, like the engine was fragile or it was damaged or it was gonna blow if I threw boost at it. I just I don't know. I had probably about almost 70,000 miles on that car. And I realized if I'm going to go with the supercharger setup, I want to go with something that is brand new. So here we are with the S650, and that's why I bought this. So, first things first, for those of you guys who are trying to decipher between an S550 and S650, um, there's not really all that much difference between the two cars. The chassis are the same, the engines are virtually the same. I'll go over a little bit of the differences between those two. The interiors are certainly different in the center console portion, but the seats are the exact same. The interior door panels on the interior side door panels, those are the exact same. The rear seats, those are the exact same. So there's a lot of similarities between the S550 and S650. And again, the same chassis. They are the S650 is built on the S550 chassis. So um, in terms of the differences between the Coyote Gen 3 and the Coyote Gen 4, and I guess there is the Gen 2 you can go with the S550. I'm going to speak more specifically towards the Gen 3 Coyote because that's what I owned, comparing it to a Gen 4, because I feel like if you're kind of between an S550 and S650, you're kind of looking at the Gen 3 or the Gen 4. You're probably not looking at the Gen 2. Now, I guess to give a quick overview on the Gen 2, in my opinion, the Gen 2 is when Coyotes really got good. And this was the Mustang GT model 2015 to 2017. The Gen 2 is it's a Coyote that took a lot of the internal parts from the Roadrunner from the Gen 1 Coyotes and put it into the GT and was used for the GT model. So you have much stronger rods, a stronger crank, and this is kind of the first time Coyotes could go see around the 1,000 horsepower mark. Now, 1,000 is a lot on a Coyote. You're kind of knocking on heaven's door with 1,000 rear wheel horsepower, but they can do it and they'll hold it okay. With the Gen 1 Coyotes, that was their biggest problem. They could take, if you're around 650 wheel horsepower, you're probably pretty safe, but things start to get kind of scary. You're knocking on heaven's door a little bit with a Gen 1 pushing to 700 or over rear wheel horsepower. That's when you're probably going to have a rod failure. But Gen 2 is when Coyotes got extremely strong. The Gen 3 is when they did the direct injection. Well, the Gen 3 is both direct injection and port injection. It has a much better manifold and even stronger internals than the Gen 2. So the Gen 4 is not really all that dissimilar from a Gen 3. There are reports, it's hard to tell. I've been really trying to research this. The Dark Horse Coyote Gen 4 does have a little bit stronger rods than the typical Gen 4 Coyote. My understanding is that the Gen 4 Coyote rods are just in the GT form are also slightly stronger than the Gen 3s. I've been trying to confirm that information. I'm not sure if whoever knows that out there who's watching this video, please comment. I'd love to know. I've been trying to lock this down and actually get my facts straight on the research, and I can't really come up with anything conclusive. But really with the Gen 4, the only thing that's really significantly different is the manifold, the dual plenums, the dual throttle bodies, and the dual intakes, which this kind of got scrapped with the Whipple, as the Whipple is still one throttle body and then one intake, just two airboxes. So Gen 3, Gen 4, there's really not much difference. I wouldn't even call the Gen 4 a better engine, um, just because the dual intakes are good. They're pretty cool, but I don't really think they buy you all that much. You know, like the Boss 02 manifolds, the Cobra Jet manifolds, they can induce more air and flow more than these Gen 4 dual intake manifolds. Um, Plus, is it really all that necessary? Probably not. I mean, the Coyote, I'm sorry, the Voodoo GT350 engine, those revs sky high, and they intake as much air as they need with their single throttle body, and then single intake tube. So if you're spending money on a Gen 3 or a Gen 4, there's not really that much significant improvement on a Gen 4. It's very minimal, and any increased cost with the Gen 4, just being that an S650 is going to cost more money than S550 in terms of the engine that you're getting, I don't really think there's any meaningful benefit to it. Also, an advantage with the Gen 3s is they've just been out for so long, they've been tuned for so long, and yeah, they're not really all that different from a Gen 4. They're just an engine that's known a lot more than the Gen 4s. It's just so well known in the tuning world that people just kind of know them at the back of their hand. Again, the Gen 4 is not much different, but there are some tweaks and differences that tunes need to be adjusted for between a Gen 3 and a Gen 4. Now, that kind of covers the engine. Um, Again, just to give you guys a quick recap, I don't think the Gen 4 is really worth the money in terms over a Gen 3 Coyote. The Gen 3s are perfectly strong. There's no real advantage. And in terms of, as soon as you start throwing on boost to a Gen 3, the dual throttle body kind of goes away, unless you're going, I don't know, maybe a twin turbo or a centrifugal supercharger setup. But if you're going Whipple, most people do on these Gen 4 Coyotes, probably not really all that necessary. Okay, so to get to styling, this is where it's going to be super preferential. Some people like the S650s better. Some people like the S550s better. For me, I do have a little bit of a preferential edge towards the S650 Mustang. It definitely is a little bit more modern. I don't know if I, it, sorry, it definitely is a little bit more modern. I think its advantages really are in the side profile. I think the side profile of the S650s is a bit more edgier, a bit cleaner than the S550s, albeit they're not really that dissimilar anyways. I do think the Gen 3 S550 Mustangs, they definitely have a much more angry or kind of pissed off look to them in the front. The S650s, not so much. I still think they look good, but I think the grill's a little bit too big. There's a piano black strip below the grill that's smooth, that doesn't really do anything. I wish that was just body color painted. And they covered a lot of the front in just grills and fins and stuff like that, which I think if there was more smoothness to it, a little bit more of a body color, body lines transition into the front end, I think it would look a little bit better. But overall, I do think the S650 is just a little bit more modern, a little bit more futuristic of a look. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the S550s, they look fantastic. And both with the S550 and S650, as soon as you start doing a little bit of visual mods to them, I think they improve vastly. So give it a little bit more chin with a front splitter. Definitely drop the car on some lowering springs at minimum. Coilovers even better, but doing some lowering springs, getting the fitment right, maybe doing something with the wing or a wicker bill and some tint. I think you have a much better looking car, no matter if you go with the S550 or an S650. Both cars from the factory, they sit on stilts. I've talked about this before. Ford cannot get stance correct. They sit so high, and I think it looks so atrocious. So that's, to me, is a requirement for any Mustang that you buy. It needs to be lowered, at least if we're talking Gen 1 Coyote to Gen 4. They sit too high. There's way too much wheel gap, far too much ground clearance, and it just doesn't look very good. It's just a very awkward styled car whenever it sits so high off the ground. Mustangs look good when they're squatted, when they're planted towards the ground. I don't know why Ford can't get that right. Because I mean, even if you go look at, like, go to a dealership, go look at some S650s. They sit like 8 inches off the ground in the front end. Like it's really atrocious of a look. I don't understand why they do that. At least to get the front end to squat down a little bit. and I think it'd just be so much better looking off the lot when you buy a brand new car. So exterior, again, it's going to be super preferential. I do have, I guess I would say a little bit edge over the S650 in terms of what I like. Now, anytime I drive by an S550 and I'm in this car, I reminisce a little bit on my S550 and how much I miss that car. They do still look so good. I don't think they look aged. And again, I think with a little bit of visual modifications, they can be a really stellar looking car. So, I guess to move in, so now to move into the interior, yes, there's some significant difference there. Just to go over it again, the seats, okay? And I guess when I say this, I'm talking about a GT Premium S550 versus a GT Premium S650. My S550 was a GT Premium 401A. This is the S650 GT Premium 401A. So I think pretty good comparison I have here that I can talk to you guys about. The seats are the exact same. The front seats, the rear seats, they're stitched the same, slightly different styling, but they are the same seats. Again, they're stitched the same. They feel the same. The leather is the same. There's not really any difference there. The interior door panels, also they are the exact same. The styling's the same, location of everything is the same, button placement, it's the exact same. Rear seats, also the exact same. Really, the only difference is between an S550 and S650, which is a significant difference, but really the only difference is the center console. That is very different. Now, this is one of those things where I don't know if age or with new versions and new revisions really has made it all that better. I do like the S650 interior. I think the center console, the whole dual iPad thing connected, I think that does look pretty good, and I do like it for sure. But if you're comparing it to a 401A GT Premium Gen 3 Coyote Mustang, the digital dash is just so fire. It looks so good. I genuinely believe that is the best dash ever fitted to a production car. I've never seen one that looks better. I love how the modes are interchangeable, and of course they're interchangeable on this. But I think the layout on the S550s, the digital dash looks so much better than on the new S650s. In terms of the center console, I do actually like the waterfall style of the S550 as the S550s, where the screen sits in the middle, below are the AC controls, and it has a monolithic kind of connection to the center console. The S650 is not like that. You have some controls, they're not AC controls, but you have some controls on the front, and then below that is like a storage tray. On the 2024 models, that used to be a charging pad for your phone. On the 2025s, they totally got rid of that, so it's just a storage place. The center console actually is also very similar-ish. You can definitely tell that there was a lot of copy and paste between the S550 and S650 kind of center console that divides passenger and the driver's side seats, but a little bit of a difference there. Um, but those are kind of the two different design cues that Ford took with the S550 and the S650. The S550 is just a more monolithic waterfall style, and the S650 is, I'm going to say, the BMW style because that's really what it looks like. But the unmonolithic interrupted storage space between the top of the center console and the mid-range center console. So, so in my opinion, I think the S550 has much more of a race car feel to it. It feels much more like a cockpit. Um, it doesn't feel so much as a luxury car. I feel like it's just much more of a race car feel, if that kind of makes sense. The S650, not so much. It doesn't really feel all that race car. It still feels good. I still like it, and it does kind of have a luxury premium feel that the S550 lacks. But all in all, as much as I do love the new interiors of the S650s, and there are some preferences I have towards it, I think all in all, if I had to take one, the S550 is just, sorry, there's a B. The S550 interior just does it a little bit better. And there's one more thing I want to talk about the interiors that I think Ford really screwed up on the new S650s. So you're going to hear a lot of people say like they hate the interior, the center console's bad, they don't like the AC control. Like you're going to hear a lot of fatal flaws about the S650 interiors that people are going to talk about. I think they're all wrong. I think the one thing that Ford got so poorly on this new interior is interior color. Um, yes, the materials could have been better. Maybe some of the center console design layout could have been better. Maybe they should have went with a analog an analog e-brake rather than an electronic drift brake. As cool as that is, I feel like a drift brake is a one-way ticket into a tree. But the one thing in my opinion that Ford I think got so wrong with these new S650s in terms of the interior is the color. The color, and I've talked about this before, and I feel like I'm crazy because I'm like the only one who talks about this on the internet. But on the S550s, the black that Ford used was jet black. And I think that's the correct choice. If you're going to go with the black, you need to own that color and go with a jet black. Jet black on an interior always looks good. Okay, you can cheap down on materials a little bit, you can quality down on soft touch stuff, but if you go with jet black, there's a lot of forgiveness in terms of aesthetics that you can make with an interior. Now with the S650, Ford dulled down that jet black. It's not a jet black anymore. It's like this faded kind of looking dark gray. Um, and if you hear that and you haven't seen it, if you hear that like dark gray, oh, that's okay. There's nothing really wrong with that. I encourage you guys to go look at it. Go to a dealership or go look online. Online pictures probably are not going to show it very well just because of filters and editing. But go to a dealership and go see an S650 interior in person. The lack of jet black, I think, was such a mistake. Aesthetically, I think it's such a downfall of the interiors of these cars. Um, I don't think it looks good. I don't like the faded look, and they use this everywhere. So they use this on the leather on the center console. They use this all over on the sides of the doors. They use this on the front of the center console and the bezeling, and even on the seats, they're less of a jet black. So on the S550s, the seats just black. On the S650s, they're black, but they're faded. That's what it looks like to me. It's like a faded black, and I don't think it looks good. I think this was such a mistake on Ford's part. Um, Obviously, did it stop me from buying the car? No, but to me, I don't think I just oh, it pains me thinking that Ford did this. I wish if they just went with the jet black, it always looks so good. It always looks so clean. It's a color you can't go wrong with. Like maybe it's not people's first choice. Maybe they'd rather go with a red or a caramel or something like that. But if you go with jet black, it's just never wrong. It's always an okay color to see. But whatever they did with this faded dark gray, I think was such a mistake, and it does not look good with the car. So I'll stop harping on that. Now you guys know my opinion on the interiors of the S650s. Um, Overall, I think they did a really good job. It lacks a little bit of the race car feel that the S550 did, but its biggest downfall, its biggest mistake that Ford made with these is the coloring. They should have just went with jet black. It would have been such a better choice. So that kind of covers my opinions on the S550 or the S650. Interiors, I would say S550 probably actually has a little bit of an edge there, just in terms of they use the correct colors. I love the monolithic waterfall design of the center console. I do like the two separate, very distinct screens. The digital dash on the S550s, as long as you go a Gen 3 401A premium car, the digital dash is just the best dash ever fitted to a car. It just looks so good. So that kind of covers that part. One thing I do think that the S650 has and one last thing on the interior, one thing that I do think the S650 has a much better advantage of on the S550 is the steering wheel. I think steering wheel is a very big improvement. They use less chrome, they made it slightly smaller, and it's flat bottom. Flat bottom steering wheels are such a move. Like they just do so much better. So because on the S550s, the steering wheel is not a flat bottom. And even on the GT350 models, it kind of is, but it really looks like they just chopped the bottom rather than actually like reform the steering wheel. But really the biggest problem on the S550s is the steering wheel is just way too big. It's like you're turning a big giant pizza. The steering wheel's too big. It should have been smaller. And now to give you guys an overall thoughts on should you go with an S550 or should you go with an S650? I'm going to say you should go with the S550. The reason is you're getting 95% of the car for a lot closer to 75% of the cost. If you're buying a brand new S650, they're expensive. And I think that is probably the biggest reason why they're such a sales flop. I know people said it was tuning. I know people said it wasn't much of a design change. I don't think those parts are all that necessarily true. I think it was certainly a design change enough. but they kept all the things that you really want the same. They kept those the same, mainly the Gen 4 Coyote, a really solid chassis with IRS, and a decent quality interior. And then two, the tuning. Well, the tuning came out, probably 5, 6 months ago. I may be over exaggerating that, but about 5 or 6 months ago, tuning came out for these cars. Um, and then even more recently, boosted tuning came out for these cars. They're still a sales flop. I looked at the numbers for this quarter. Q3 going into Q4 for Ford Mustangs. They're still a sales flop. People aren't buying them. Um, so I think really the biggest reason why people are not buying these cars is they're just too expensive. They're just way too expensive. So to me, I don't th- and to me, I don't think that expense is all that much worth it when the Gen 3 is right there for a lot less money, at least $10,000 cheaper for an equivalent car if you're buying used. Because if you're buying new and you get something, say you get a base model, uh, you're still very close, or even if you start going with options, you're into the $50,000 range. And I think with options on a base model over $50,000 on Mustang, for a base V8, I think that's crazy. That's far too much. I think Ford has lost sight a little bit about what the Mustang is. Um, it's a everyday buyer's car. It's a blue collar American workers pony car. And now you have the GTD, which is $350,000. The Shelby American Super Snakes, which are like $225,000. Like I feel like at some point people have the people who make these cars and design them and modify them have forgotten what they are about, and they've just gone crazy with prices. Now I think it's cool what they've done with this, the Shelby American Super Snake and the GTD. They're awesome cars for sure. I don't want to hate on them, but they're so expensive, and it's like, do you know that it's called a Mustang? Like, do you know that it's called a Mustang, right? Like Mustangs that are triple digits, starting with a 2 or 3, is not really what a Mustang is about. But anyways, enough of my tangent on that. Back to the prices of these GT models. I don't really think they're all that much worth it. Now, there are some really killer deals to be had. I made a video on my channel about how you can very easily, I say easily, it's going to take some work and a lot of phone calls, but you can absolutely do it, especially with these cars being such a sales flop. I made a video about how you can get, $7,000 off or more on one of these cars. And if you're able to shop around and get a super good deal, they certainly can be worth it. I get the preference for wanting the newer model. Um, there's warranties that come with it. There's a little bit of prestigeness that comes with it. I kind of get that. Like it's cool to have the next best thing, the brand new model. There's a reason why iPhone releases a new phone every single year with absolutely zero changes to it, because people just really have a preference for the latest and greatest. So I get that, and I think if you can get a really good deal on one of these and for buying one new, maybe they're okay. But if you're buying used, you're probably back into the low 40s for an S650 model, at least for a base model, but probably in the high 40s for GT Premium, 401A, and start getting some really good options on those cars. That's still just really expensive. And then when you start looking at, the equivalent car for Gen 3 Coyotes with the S550s, premiums with 401A digital dashes, they're in the 30s all day. Low 30s. I've seen high 20s. Now, obviously, those are going to be higher mileage examples, but mid low 30s all day long for those cars. So you're definitely at a $10,000 or more price drop between a Gen 4 Coyote S650 and a Gen 3 Coyote S550. And I think that savings goes a long way. One, you can take that and put into Boost. You can take that and not spend it on cars at all, which is the intelligent choice. But we're here to have fun, and we only live once, so I would recommend going Boost with your Gen 3 S550. But that's just me. So really, all in all, I don't think the Gen 4 Coyote Mustangs really are all that worth it if you're looking for best, bang for buck, to get the most value out of the least amount of money. Just for how much car you can get for the cost of what they really are. Like I said, you know, for a Gen 3, you're getting 95 or more percent of the car for 70, 75% of the cost. So that's kind of everything. I hope that helps you guys out here if you're deciding between an S550 and S650. Now, I know if you do have a 550 and you're looking for a new Mustang, you're probably going to splurge for an S650. But if you don't have either and you're looking for which route you should choose, there's definitely pros and cons to both. But for for value per dollar, S550 is where it's at by far and away. It's so much car for so much less money than these new S650s. But you know, maybe times will change. I don't maybe the S550 Mustangs, they don't really go down in value so much anymore. And then as these S650s keep rolling off, the production line not selling very well, the 2026 model year has just started to hit the dealerships. Maybe these kind of come down in price and maybe that changes a little bit. But for right now, I think value for dollar, Gen 3 is where it's at. If you really need to have the latest and greatest, which I get, um, Gen 4 is there and certainly an option for you guys. So again, hopefully that helps you guys out here if you're deciding between these two different models of Mustang. Either way, you're not going to go wrong. The Coyote is a fantastic platform. They do boost so well, and you can go hold some really high rear wheel horsepower numbers on a totally unopened stock Coyote. Um, and when I say totally unopened, I'm going to minus the oil pump gears and crank sprocket. You should probably do that. But with that said, they hold incredible horsepower numbers, a lot better than the Gen 1s. So again, hopefully that helps you guys. That's everything I got for you. Not going to tell you to like, comment, and subscribe. I want you to do that on your own volition. If you're getting value from the channel, that's perfect. That's all I want from you guys. If you want to subscribe and that's something you feel like you're ready to do, go ahead. I would love that. But for right now, just enjoy the content. Come here, enjoy some Mustang videos. There's a lot more to come, and your guys' presence here on my channel is so extremely appreciated. So I thank you guys so much for that.